Okay, so going from, well, we'll start this way. So this is a special session, and I've been asked to share more of what I'm aware of. And the questions that were brought to me are really magnificent questions, because often I don't know what I'm aware of until there's a reason to express it. So this is an exploration into sharing, I guess, the way consciousness presents to me, and how information is organized and then expressed through me. What I notice about how I share things is there's always a priority of simplicity and practicality, meaning, yeah, we have access to every bit of information. We have the ability to, just like I was thinking about it this morning, just like Google World or the Google satellite, when you're on the map and you can zoom in anywhere on the planet because of the satellite imaging. Through our awareness, we have the capacity to zoom in on any kind of information that presents in our awareness in any level of consciousness. We're all equipped with that ability, and not everybody has. Well, everybody has a different awareness of that ability and a different capacity with that ability. So I guess I just want to say that, to put out there that what I'm sharing and my awareness of my ability to tune into these things, it's natural for all of us. And everybody can expand and develop their ability to any degree that works for them. But ultimately, what we're here for, I mean, if that's what calls to you, fantastic, but what we're here for is to bring all of this brilliant information and this love and this light into whatever our practical lives are every day. And when we do that, that's when these abilities in awareness start to open up spontaneously. It's sort of a paradox where if you just embrace the humanness and go full on into the humanness, it opens up your access to the infinite. And I just think it takes a little education and reminding sometimes for people to understand that that ability is just sitting there waiting for them. So maybe that's what we're playing with here today, just to open that up for people. So the questions that were handed to me are the big ones, which are really fun, and we'll see where it goes. So let's start with what is soul? What is soul and what is spirit? And again, simple. So soul, this word, soul, I mean, let's acknowledge that this is a term that we use to try to understand an aspect of our life, of existence. So soul is a term for the aspect of each of us that carries forward information from previous life streams. Soul is that part that is the expression of our uniqueness into physical human form. Right? Does that make sense? So looking at it as a term, it might seem like it takes the mystery out of it, but it's a very simple concept. It is that part of us that carries information forward from life stream to life stream to life stream. It's the part of us that carries the concept of karma. It's the part of us that carries the expression of humanness, almost like like a transducer. It's a field of, like a band of consciousness that is an aspect of us through which our creator essence, which is an even higher frequency than soul, it's a band of consciousness through which our creator frequency moves that has encoded information that says, okay, I've been through this and I've been through this, and wow, we experienced that. I don't ever want to do that again. And here's what I still want to experience to really truly know myself manifested in physical form. But it is not the full extent of who we are. I know there's still, a lot of teachers like Jean Houston is in the forefront of my mind right now, because she's actually going to be here speaking in our town later this month. But I saw a clip from her talking about the soul as if the soul is who we are. So that to that I say yes, until you go beyond it. The reason I know we can go beyond it is because we can conceive of a concept called a soul. Once I can define something, that's the proof that who I am is already bigger than that. Right? Because if I can conceive of this idea called a soul, where'd that come from? And if I can conceive of a concept that I can label that's bigger than a soul, well, where did that come from? Who created that? Where did that creation come from? And then where did that come from? And where did that come from? And that right there describes the infinite. And again, it's this paradox of, that the torus, the energy field called a tube torus. Do you guys know that one? No? Let's do this. I'm going to pull up a picture. And then I'm going to share my screen. Because this is going straight into geometry. So let's share my screen. How do I do that? Oh, there it is. Okay. That is a tube torus. It's an energy field where energy is constantly in motion, not only in a circular way around that tube. There's space right down through the center of that, but the energy also moves in a spiral all the way around that tube. Okay, so where did I start with that? So with the tube torus, where did I start with that?
You were talking about the soul and concept of infinity, and
right, and how we know that there's always something beyond, right? Mm-hmm. That if I can conceive of the soul, then where did that come from? And if I can conceive of something beyond the soul that created the soul, then what created that? That's the paradox. That's where I was headed with this. As people, we have this finiteness of a physical form, but there's also the infinite of something bigger than anything I could ever think of, right? There's always something bigger that is the source from which my ideas have distilled. The more we are asking these questions and seeking these things, we are actually creating those bigger and bigger and bigger and more expanded places in the infinite. And the way we know, this is the paradox, the way we can know it is by fully acknowledging what we have in the physical. Because it is our expression through the physical that continues to expand the infinite, simply because we're exploring it. Exploration is the same as creation. I'll give you an example. There are, I don't remember their names, there are these two brothers that are traveling and talking about the technology that their father developed, which is called holographic blood imaging. And what they do is they take live blood from a person, and they've developed a combination, I think, of their methodology as well as their technology. And they look at live blood, a live blood sample, and they can see within that holographic images of parts of the body that are showing up with ailments or showing up with like years old problems, showing up with where there are inconsistencies or diseases, or wherever the body might not be in fluid expression. That part of the body will provide a literal holographic image within the live blood sample. So for example, if you had a broken nose or a broken collarbone, and they took a live blood sample and look at the holographic imaging, there would present an image, a holographic image of a collarbone or a nose or a liver or some part of the body. And this is the holographic energetic communication from your whole system being presented through this live blood sample, so they can do diagnosis that way. When I heard about that, that was fun for me. I'm like, where did that come from? How did that come into creation? And, this one man spent 40 years looking at blood samples. He started out, the story as I understand it is, he started out, studying to be a doctor, and was provided killed blood, stained blood, which is how it's normally done. That you take a sample of blood and then you put a stain in it, and it kills everything, and then you have a dead slide to look at under a microscope. But he started looking at live blood samples, which, at the time people would think is crazy. But 40 years of his consciousness looking at live blood samples and knowing there's something here, there's something here, there's something here, there's something here. Show me, show me, show me, show me, show me. On one hand, you could say that he finally discovered, he finally found what was there. But what I see in that is he created a whole different system of diagnosis simply by knowing there's something here. And his consciousness created something bigger within the infinite. His consciousness looking for this was actually connecting with the creator source, right? That we don't really have a great concept for, because it keeps getting bigger than our terms, our terminology. But connecting with that creator essence, connecting with the cosmic lattice work, which is the realm of consciousness that starts to organize the etheric consciousness into form, the cosmic lattice work. He was playing with all of those levels simply with his purity and earnest creation of knowing there's something here, there's something here, there's something here. So when we look at things from the perspective of science, science is a system of thinking. It's something for the mind that has a definite approach of proof and elimination of what's not true. science wants to narrow things down to the smallest part and understand the smallest parts and then reconstruct things. Well, in our consciousness, we can work with science, and that's great. It's wonderful because science creates a wonderful foundation for humanity to feel safe, that things are proven. I can trust this. I can run with this. Well, when we really look at playing in consciousness and really playing with this perpetual field of creative energy, which is what this torsion field describes. It's perpetually regenerating itself, but also contributing to the whole. But when we're playing on that level, we're not relying on proof to create something new. We're not relying on the understanding of things fitting together. What we're doing is connecting with the part of us that we could call insight, the part of us that already knows what's going on in the universe. It's just our mind might not be able to describe it, but we can tap into it. And what it feels like is, I know there's something here. I know there's something here. And embracing that feeling of, I know there's something here, is invoking the creation of it into the physical. It's what that sensation, that embracing and that really receiving that, yes, there is something here, there's something here, there's something here. You are very literally expanding from your heart center up to and through the soul level, beyond the soul level, to connect with the cosmic lattice work of universal communication, and saying, I, as a creator in form, I know there is something here. So bring it in. If it exists, let it present in front of me. If it doesn't exist, let's build it. And each one of us has that capacity. Now, the reason why I know that that's beyond the soul level is because the soul, like we were saying, is the part of us that carries forward what we know from previous life streams, or what we've decided from previous life streams. It's the part that carries forward our experience of other incarnations. So, my other incarnations were happening in times of different levels of technology, different levels of oppression, different levels of freedom, different levels of relationships. And if I were functioning solely from the soul level, then it would take longer to process, if this is the soul level, right? It would take more sequences of events to show me that maybe it's not functioning the same way anymore. Does that make sense? But if I am willing to say, okay, here's the soul level, and that's great. That's fantastic, because it's gotten us this far to identify with a soul. But what we're playing with now is going beyond the frequencies of a soul level to a much, much more expanded creator essence, and saying, if I have this and I am this, then let's work from there. Let's acknowledge the soul level, but dissolve the decisions we made from this life stream or that life stream or that life stream. Let's dissolve all the decisions we've made and instead start creating what I know I can feel in my heart, even if I don't know how to talk about it. Okay, so my own experience, even as I'm sharing it with you, when I was 3, watching my parents have a hard time with each other and treating each other with being mean or harsh, I knew every particle of my being when I was 3, there's a different way, guys. And I knew that day that this is why I'm here, is for a different way. Now I'm 3, right? I don't have concepts of speech and vocabulary. I didn't have any of this, but I knew, like, if there's anything in the world a person knows, boom, that was it. There is a different way to be in relationship with one another. And on that day, I created it. Now, perhaps it was the same creation as many, many other people whose hearts know there's a different way. And now, there are hundreds of thousands of us who are starting to live and function in this different way. And it's been called spirituality. Okay, that's fine. Because for thousands of years, spirituality has been taught by the masters, by the Buddhas and the Yeshuas and the Kuan Yins and all of the masters who've been on the planet but don't have big popular names, right? They've all been bringing this consciousness forward and perhaps have known and been aware of this creator essence beyond the soul. But the way consciousness has been building upon itself, we've used the concept of the soul to help people see, hey, you are more than your body. So really, really simple, really simple. The soul, the spirit, it's terminology for different levels of consciousness that can help us feel and explore who we are. But just know, not any single one of them is the answer. Because the more you explore, you are expanding already beyond that answer. Just by asking the question. You're actually creating more space through which information can come to you just by asking the question. And it's great. That's kind of my favorite part, right? That there isn't one answer. So A, you're never wrong. You're never going to be wrong. And B, you are constantly generating something new that has never been seen before. And you're not alone. Because more than ever, there are so many of us whose hearts are creating from these frequencies of let's build things differently, right? So how does that feel so far, Odile, for your question of what is the soul, what is the spirit?
Very, very well. I was wondering, I don't know exactly how to phrase the question, but so we have the opportunity in this life to become aware of maybe decisions or things like that we made in other lifetimes, and but it's not that it's necessary to undergo very years and years of hypnotic regression to be aware of each and every one of our previous lifetimes, right?
Right.
Things will reproduce in our lifetime, or scenarios, things like that. Is it how it works, or?
Definitely. The patterning, the things that we've experienced before, like repeating a certain kind of relationship, or repetitive thinking, or always ending up in the same spot, or even things like, being really afraid of snakes, being afraid of rats, being afraid of having things around your neck, or being afraid to succeed, being afraid of being visible, or exposed. At the same time, sometimes people who are driven to dominate and to be in control. All of these, that's all expressions of the patterns from previous life streams that, like you're saying, in this life, we do have the opportunity to dissolve these things with great ease, actually, because of there's the consciousness in and of itself is moving much, much faster than it ever has before. So the simplicity of it, back up 1 second. The way to recognize when something is a pattern like that is really simple. It's, do I have this feeling and this sense of this is how it always goes? Do I have this feeling or this sense of, oh, here it is again, or this always happens, or a deathly fear, or an overwhelming drive to do something or avoid something that feels like, if I don't do this, I'll be missing something. If I don't do this, I'll miss out. If I don't do this, I will have neglected my responsibility, or I will have missed the boat. Any of those kinds of feelings, that is the marker that when we're paying attention, when we're willing to be aware and really truly have said, I'm done, show me how to get out of these patterns. Noticing those sorts of things, like, again, a drive that feels like if I don't do this, I've missed the boat. That drive is actually a marker that says, hey, this is a pattern. Because when we are truly fluid and we're truly letting our higher levels come in and through us, there is no sensation of missing anything. In fact, it's the sensation of, I've accomplished everything that I came here to accomplish for the moment, so I wonder what's next. When people say live every day like it's your last, that sensation of no conflict, of ease, of yes, this is wonderful. If this were my last day on the planet, I'm good. That is the sensation of embraced and really riding the wave of your higher levels of consciousness, of truly welcoming in the aspects of you that are beyond the soul level. So when you do want to start to recognize what are the patterns, how do I step out of them? Start to let yourself notice that familiar feeling of, I gotta get it done, or I can't let that happen. And that's your marker that says, look at that. This is my invitation to stay on the karmic wheel or step right off of it. And then the stepping off, there are many tools for doing that, but and it'll be unique for everybody because it'll be a different level of intensity for everybody. That stuff is sticky. The old stuff is really sticky. Let's not deny that, and it's very highly charged, and most of us have identified with it for thousands of years. Identified with it as if to say, this is who I am. This is the way the world works. I just have to get through it. And then the curtain comes down and we survive, But to start to notice those patterns, and what if that were the highest priority? What if that were the priority? I want to be aware of these things. I promise you, like you said, they start to present. You don't have to go looking for them. In fact, your life is perfectly designed to have you walk right into these things for the opportunity to see it and go, I'm not doing that again. I don't even know if anything else exists, but I'm not doing that again. You know, and it does take courage because we have this humanness. And the humanness has been very convinced that it is vulnerable to death. Right? Which it is. Mm-hmm. The body is vulnerable to death. You can slice a head off and the body doesn't exist anymore, because that's how a body is functioning. That's designed to function, right? You can destroy an ego and it could crumble a person's worldview to have their ego dismantled. So an ego is vulnerable. A mind is vulnerable because it too can be dismantled either with all sorts of bombardment from different thought patterns in different directions, and a mind that has nothing to help it understand its world can fray and become an aspect of consciousness that does not harmonize with the body or the heart. So a mind is vulnerable. But through all of that, there is still this source and this essence that's animating your body. There is this thing, this source that keeps the heart beating, even though we're not thinking about it. Even though the ego has no say about the heart beating, even though the mind has no say about the heart beating, otherwise it wouldn't be beating while we're asleep. We don't need the mind to remind the heart to beat. So it is that essence that, and you can tune right into that even while we're talking about it, by simply saying, I want to become aware of it. And just right from the heart, I want to be aware of that feeling and that essence that keeps my heart beating and keeps the energy moving. But let's not put any other definitions on it. Just ask to be aware of it and then walk forward. And I promise you, different experiences and circumstances and awarenesses will just pop up right in front of your face to say, hey, are you aware of it? Hey, it's right there. Can you feel it? Or when we read online, or when we talk to other people, when the priority really is, okay, I'm done with these patterns. Show me who I am without them. And I want to be aware of that essence that is beyond the soul level, that actually is animating me. Let's let it be that simple. And I'm going to walk through my life now. Make me aware. That is a beginning to opening your capacity to zoom in to any bit of information that presents in consciousness. When that's my priority, and that's how I'm walking through the world, and I'm walking around, and I know my priority is I want to be aware of this essence, this divine essence that's me, that is vulnerable to nothing. In fact, it's the one that's creating all of this. When that's my priority, and I just feel compelled to turn and look, or even don't even feel compelled, I just turn and I look and I see a picture on a wall over there, and something about that picture brings me the sensation or the awareness of, hey, this is what you asked for, and it's right there. That's the time to say, aha, let's zoom in on this. I want to know more. I don't need to understand it. I just want to know. That's where you can, if you had a screen, you could zoom in to the information that is encoded, not just in the picture you saw, but the information encoded in the awareness that had you realized there's something more here in the first place. The picture is just the physical marker that helps my humanness say, ooh, there's something here. So when I zoom in then, beyond the visual of the picture, I say, okay, show me more. And it's like zooming in to another level of consciousness. The information will always come. And it will always come in a way that will complement you, so that you're not scared. So we don't get scared into withdrawing from the information. And sometimes we still do get scared because it can be intense, right? When we're really open and we have an encounter like with another person. And I don't, maybe this has happened to you, but meeting somebody you've never met before, except you see them and you feel them. And for me, I've had these instances where my body just starts shaking. Like there's such an intensity to being in that person's presence, and my body starts shaking. Well, that shaking is my body's response to multiple levels of consciousness and energy coming together all at the same time. And my body is trying to figure out, okay, which is the frequency I'm going to respond to. And it starts to shake out all sorts of particles of old patterns, because encountering that person on that day, that intensity is bringing to, when I zoom in on it, is bringing to light previous life streams that we've shared together that are encoded with memories and decisions. And simply showing up for that encounter, acknowledging that this intensity that I'm feeling is my own system working to recalibrate as who I am today, rather than responding to who I was then. Your natural systems are kicking in to recalibrate themselves. So again, the real gold walking through our lives is knowing that my priority is to bring in the highest levels of me, because I'm no longer willing to repeat all these things that happened at the soul level or the karmic level. And the higher levels of us, our higher levels of frequency and consciousness, already know this. Our part is recognize the love and the light within everything, because that is the connection with our highest levels. And then recognize that everything that is not that love and that highest vibration of light that only gets higher, everything that is not that is welcome to dissolve. I'm not going to re-identify with it. It's compelling, okay? I'm not going to pretend anything. When something really charged and really scary or really wonderful presents, it is so compelling to say, yes, this is who I am. I am afraid of spiders. I am in love with only this kind of person. It's compelling. But I wonder if it's true. So when we're talking about going beyond the soul level, when we're talking about our higher levels, we're exploring the journey that's created by this command of show me the truth here. Show me the highest levels of truth here. And when we're on that journey, the old debris will literally dissolve itself in the light of my priority, which is I'm no longer willing to embody that. I'm going this way. And when I can, say I'm walking and here comes an old pattern, I'm coming up right to it, and I'm like, oh my God, and it looks like it's like this, and it looks like I'm going to end up stuck here again. It's compelling because there's a big charge on it. And there's millions of other individuals on the planet who are likely still living in that pattern, keeping it alive in our collective awareness. So let's not get in a fight with it. Let's just acknowledge there is that pattern. Whoa. But then again, the real journey and the mastery is knowing, wait a minute, why am I here? What am I about? What am I doing? What's really going on here? What's the truth here? Show me more. So that the heart shines a light on it. And suddenly we can see, ooh, there it is. There's that pattern. I'm not doing that again. And maybe this time I weave my way through it a little bit just because it's super familiar and I know how to do that. My ego and my mind say, no, I got this. I'm fine. I'll be fine. No, I know what I'm doing, right? And it weaves through here and everything. But it still feels gross and I still don't want to be there. So then what? Then we go, oh, wait a minute, right? What am I really here for? What am I really about? And this is the practical part. This is the practical part of the courage and the willingness and the commitment to my own journey. That the moment I go, whoa, look at this. I'm farting around in the same sandbox. I'm going to go this way now. That choice, literally, very literally, that choice to step away from it very literally is already dissolving this. It doesn't have to be, in this paradigm of, like you were talking about, years of regressions and the deep work, doing the deep work and all that stuff. You can do it that way. It's still available. And at the same time, the simplicity is knowing what direction I'm going rather than focusing on fixing anything that wasn't working before. When working with horses, forward fixes everything. With horses, if they're getting bunched up in their mind, or the behavior is going strange, or the horses are getting confused, the best way to remedy the situation is release controls and just go forward. Just walk forward drop every agenda. Say I'm trying to train a horse to ask them to bend their body and all they're doing is fighting and resisting. Or I'm asking them to step stronger with one leg or any sorts of fancy things, and there's resistance and difficulty. The first thing I'm going to do is just relax everything and just walk forward in a natural swing, not knowing where we're going to end up next. It doesn't matter what happens next. What matters is walking forward toward it. So forward fixes everything. And it's a simplicity that the mind that likes to solve problems and puzzles, it doesn't really like this idea of do nothing but go forward, even if you don't know where you're headed. But I promise you, if that becomes part of how you walk in the world, that you have the option when everything is bunched up to just release the controls and walk forward, I promise you, your higher levels, the whole universe will start showing you, okay, you're moving again. Here's a good direction. Here's what feels good to you. Here's what is different from what you've experienced before. And that is that willingness to embrace and be embraced by a universe that already knows what harmony is, already knows what lightness is, already knows what total celebration is, total exuberance, total expression. All of that is already existing as well. And so stepping out of all of those patterns, the extreme simplicity is go forward into what your heart already knows. And everything else will dissolve. But we also have tools because sometimes it's really sticky, right? And the sticky stuff is within that soul level. So why would I identify with a soul when who I am is already so much more than that? Right? And yeah, when you walk through your life, you don't have to go searching for the difficulties. Your life is designed to bring up right in front of you, through people, through circumstances, all of the places that are stuck. And we call it being annoyed. We call it opinions, right? We call it, oh, this is so hard. I wish I didn't have to do this. That's just the pragmatic, practical communication from our higher levels and our lower levels that says, hey, here's something to dissolve. Here's something that's not working anymore. And I have the capacity to just say, all right, well, then show me the direction I am going, because I'm not going to spend time where I'm not going. Show me the direction I am going and bring me the tools that help me get there. It's a different priority, a different focus. Does that make sense? Does that help?
Absolutely.
Because it's so simple. Life is very simple, not always easy, but really, really simple. One of the other questions you asked that we started talking about another time, I guess, was why is humanity so caught up in the drama? Like, why did we even do all of this? Why are we so blinded? Why are we so numb? Why are we so combative? Where did that come from? Right? Yeah. Yeah. So way back in the day, it was really never in the design. It was really never in the design to go this far into combat, to go this far into destroying ourselves to know who we are. It got that way because of the existence of an egoic structure, that the mind that comes with all these charges. The egoic structure is the one that says, ooh, this is good, or oh, that's bad. And then the mind, which is a different aspect than an ego, the mind says, whoa, something can be good and something can be bad? Show me more. And now the mind has some place to play. So everything was designed, nature was designed to be in harmony. It's easy, it's natural, it's automatic. Everything writes itself, right? But then this species, humanity, comes with the capacity to, music, comes with the capacity to say, you have 3 shells and I only have 1. So I wonder if I had 4, if I'd be more important than you, or I'd be better, or I would have more. The comparison. That's the simplicity of where it all started, is this consideration that more of something is better, less of something is worse. And then people got, the mind and the ego, the mental egoic structure, kind of had a heyday with that and just started using the creative ability in service to this less or more paradigm, this better or worse paradigm. That's the simplicity of it. So again, another little marker that lets us know when we're caught up is, are we comparing something? Am I saying that this is good and that's bad? The moment you recognize that maybe it's a family member whose behavior has us saying, oh, that's bad. Or There's a person out in the world doing destructive things and harming other people. If I find myself with a thought of, oh, that's bad, that's just coming from the constructs of the mental egoic structure that decided one thing is good and another thing is bad. Once that started, humanity dove right into it. Because once one person says, ooh, I could have 4, and then you would have none, and that would make me more important, that literally created a whole different way of being in the world that didn't exist before. That's our power as creators. If you know it, it is created. It's just, maybe it's manifesting in the physical, or maybe not yet. So once this person created that more is better, there's another person who, because consciousness and and all of creation will harmonize itself, there's immediately another being that says, that is the embodiment of less is worse. More is better, less is worse. Because opposites were created. So that back and forth has been very compelling for people. Why does humanity stay stuck in it? Because the vibration of polarity and opposites started to pull the total frequency of humanity down to lower and lower and lower frequencies. And as our total frequency as a species started to come down and down and down, individuals would identify more and more with, this is who I am, this is what's bad and good, this is how I function. I'm a female, therefore these are my roles. I'm a male, therefore this is how powerful I am, and I'm supposed to have the power, and I'm supposed to wield it. And now when I do wield it, this is what happens now, and it goes lower and lower and lower and lower and lower. And as more humans were created, meaning born, from a lower level of frequency, they identify with that. The very cells of our body and our DNA were created from a lower frequency of consciousness. So why are people stuck in that? Because that's what they know. Because that is how their humanness has been created. So we can share all the time, night and day. There, look at the Buddha, look at Jesus, look at all of the masters. And when people are functioning and identified with that lower frequency, then the Buddha and divinity and the Kuan Yins and the archangelic realms and all of these ascended realms are just concepts. Because in their world, they're identified at this frequency, and those things don't exist when you have low frequency goggles on. So you and I know that there's more because we can feel it. You and I know there are higher frequencies because we can feel it. We still have the capacity to identify with the aspects of our own humanness that are down here. And that's what happens when we have self-pity, when we feel depressed, when we are judgmental of ourselves and others. And all that means is my mental egoic structure has gone into saying, well, this is who I am. And there's nothing wrong with that. It makes total sense. It's almost mathematical when you look at it in terms of frequency. But at the same time, we also have the experience, the literal experience of the higher frequencies of ourself, of the state of being that is without judgment. That's why we play with the sensory realm, because in that sensory realm, there's nothing to judge. You're simply feeling what is. And so we look out at the world and see millions of people very identified with a band of consciousness that is just a lower frequency. And within that is, this is who I think I am. Even then, their hearts are asking for more, and a lot of people know, their hearts know that there's more, but in that band of frequency, it doesn't exist. More doesn't exist here. That's why when you and I step out and just live with this knowing that I know there's more. And you know what? That's where I'm headed. You are actually stepping into a brand new creation of more in your own universe that contributes to every other universe. It's another way of saying our higher levels is you are your own universe. That's that toroidal field again. This right here is its own little universe. And this is talking about quantum field theory and geometry. It all describes a structure upon which etheric consciousness, unmanifest consciousness, can come into form in a harmonized way. This field, the flower of life, describes, that's actually not the flower of life, that's more than that. Hang on. There we go. That describes a structure that can help organize consciousness so that it can come into physical form and do it in a way that will move and respond to all other consciousness. We look, where is it? There are images, people have done images of the cross-section of DNA. And there's just so much geometry in DNA. I haven't found all of the sources of all of these to see, they say it's a DNA cross-section. This one is so perfect. I wonder, where that really came from, because here obviously is the flower of life and other geometric figures, apparently from an electron microscope, but I don't know the source of it. But I've seen these mandala figures as cross-sections of DNA. All over the place. But it does make sense. I mean, you have DNA as a spiral, and if you take a cross-section of a spiral shape, it's going to produce patterns. It's going to produce other patterns. So geometry is how our humanness, from our human understanding, it is a way for us to organize our understanding and be able to not only receive information and cognitize how consciousness comes into form, but it also provides us a way to communicate directly with consciousness, kind of in its own language. It's a way to distinguish between the mental egoic structure of polarity and the harmony that makes it possible for all of life to communicate with itself. Like this, where'd it go? the flower of life image there's so many good images here. The flower of life image, oh, hang on one sec. The flower of life image gives rise, oh, stop. Okay. Gives rise to all of these other shapes. Like the mathematics from the flower of life, starting literally with one circle, is going to give rise to all of these other shapes. So again, geometry and sacred geometry describes the simplicity of the physical realm. And it gives us a way to organize our thinking, if we want to, so that we can live in the absence of polarity. There's no polarity in a circle. There's no, unless, you know, the energy is moving in such a way that it creates a field. And that is where the tube torus comes in. Let's pull that up here. A tube torus moving like that is going to create a pull and a movement of energy. In this case, it looks like from the top toward the bottom. Either way, it doesn't really matter. But it's still a circle that is perpetual. And the only reason polarity is created is because of the movement. There's so much, oh man, there's so much. Does this make sense? Is this addressing what you wanted to hear? Or do you want to ask a question that tunes things in a different direction?
Yes, it was one of my questions. I was wondering, how do you actually feel geometry when you see shapes and forms, and do you actually feel the difference between them? And yeah.
Yes, it's possible. For myself, I don't focus that way. If I focus that way, absolutely. You can tune in and feel, like very simply, Odile, you can say, I want to feel the triangles. I want to feel the pyramids, the pyramid shapes within things. Or I'd like to feel all the spheres. You can do that because a pyramid has a tone and a frequency that's different than a sphere. This is why, again, why I play with the simplicity of being able to distinguish same or different, same or different. Because from that foundation, you can always build your vocabulary. So for myself, do I feel the different frequencies of geometry? Absolutely. Like, especially if something pops up for me, an article or some bit of research that somebody put out, or a bit of writing. And when I tune into my body and I listen energetically and I listen multidimensionally, it's like a symphony of information. The same way in a musical symphony, of course, it's one creation, this piece of music with many different instruments. But at the same time, I can tune in to the horns. I can tune into the violins. I can tune into percussion. And just because I tuned into percussion, it doesn't mean the rest of it went away. It's still happening. But I can feel the percussion. Or I can tune in and feel the viola. Or I can use my other sense and watch the conductor. But I can also tune in and I can feel the conductor feeling the musicians. So in that same way, I can tune in to different geometries, and I can feel the different aspects of a vector equilibrium. Do you know what the vector equilibrium is?
Yeah, it rings a bell, but I am.
Let's pull it up. That's one representation of it. So tuning in to the vector equilibrium, even just right here, use your eyes, find the pyramids, and then tune into your body. And just say, body, show me what the pyramids feel like in this vector equilibrium. But don't compare what you feel to anything. Don't compare it to anything. Just explore your own sensory vocabulary. Just tune into it and say, show me. And then, okay, then tune into the squares. What do the squares feel like? And does it feel different? And just notice. It's different information. That's all it is. It's a different encodement. Now, a lot of people will immediately say, well, what does it mean? Right? And for me, I don't care. I don't care what it means. I care where the information is guiding me, because I don't need to have a definition of what this shape means in order to travel forward. Because truly, as I say, okay, I can feel the pyramids, I can feel the squares, I wonder what else is there. Like, for example, imagine that each of those straight lines were actually a curved line, which is actually more the truth. Imagine each of those straight lines were 3 curved lines that form another geometric shape. And then imagine each of those geometric shapes of 3 lines and 2 points each could twist and bend like this. That would provide, just what does that feel like to you? Can you tune in that way? And just give your mind a free pass to not understand it.
Yeah. Yes. I feel different feelings when I look at a pyramid and when I look at a square.
Yeah.
And then when you talked about curves and flexibility, it gave me a feeling of softness, very, very I want to say I prefer it. Yeah.
And so let's tune into that and just play with it. There isn't a correct answer, but I wonder, why would I prefer it? What is it about the curved lines that feels preferable to me? And just, I don't know, open that space and go, I wonder what it is. And what insight? Just let yourself have insight. Why would, even take it outside of you, why would a human have a preference for curved lines rather than straight lines? I wonder. And just give it space. And what presents? Let yourself have an insight about it. What presents?
Yeah, I don't know how to explain it, how to say it differently, other than it feels softer. It feels more welcoming. Um, um, uh, I would be, yeah, I would feel more attracted to it. Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. When you go out to the forest and just go walking, or when you go to the ocean, or when you look at nature that created itself, you know, nature that was not put there by humans, right? How many straight lines do you see in nature? Like total straight lines where where we just were. Like this. When you're out in nature, in the forest.
They're perfectly straight. No, they're
right.
Not that I know of.
Right. Nature doesn't produce straight lines. Nature produces curved lines and relationships. So there's the Fibonacci sequence, which also comes back to the flower of life. And there's this spiral is found everywhere in nature. Sometimes you have to tune in really, really small to see it, like DNA. Sometimes you have to tune in really, really big and look at a whole forest in order to reveal how this pattern is expressing itself. Other places like this aloe plant, it's obvious. Things like the nautilus shell, it is a curve that nature produces at a pretty consistent, something like 36.7 degrees. You can arrive at that by starting with a circle and starting to study the mathematics of a circle. So when we're more attracted to curved lines, it's because that is closer to what nature produces for itself. Now, when we've been studying physics and quantum theory and all that good stuff, then because of the way physics has been created in the physical world, physics has always included time and space, as if time and space require linear measure, right? From A to B, or from time a second 1 to second 3. How do we measure the frequency of a wave according to time? How do we measure the mass of an object according to space? Well, here's the cool thing. Physicists are now exploring the thought that maybe time and space are not inherent to consciousness. Are not, like, what if we take time and space out of the equation? This is exciting for me because consciousness is not dependent on time and space. Time and space are distilled from our freedom to create within consciousness. Time and space are factors of the physical world. But when you start to look at the interface between the physical world and all of consciousness, you have to let go of time and space. And letting go of time and space happens in that intersection that translates the unmanifest into the manifest. DNA is part of that intersection. Geometry is part of that intersection. Geometry and DNA are the interface that help organize pure consciousness into physical form. It's the blueprint, we use that word all the time, right? That says, okay, let's take etheric information, because that's all it is. Etheric, unorganized, pure, full, undifferentiated information, and organize it in a way that will create something that holds its form. That's what DNA does for biological form. That's what geometry does for non-biological form, as well as biological form. You kind of can't separate it, and that's why people do that cross-section of DNA to show the geometry within that biological interface. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Let me go back really quick to what I wanted to share here. And, you know, that guy, there's a shape with those curved lines. I recommend sonic geometry, by the way. My friend Eric put this together with Alana Luna. So this is where
not only the arc of the unfolding Fibonacci spiral, but also the tones required to build another numerically perfect major chord.
Sonic geometry starts to correlate the geometry with frequency through sound. What Eric did was total the angles of a shape, like a triangle or a pyramid. You know, that this is a 60 degrees, 60 degrees, and 60 degrees of a triangle. A triangle's angles will always add up to 180. We know all of this. He started to play that as a musical note and started to find harmonies among these simple platonic solids and geometric shapes. So again, it's another way that geometry is describing the harmony of nature. And all of that begins to correlate with the Fibonacci sequence, which is that golden spiral, that golden mean. All of that can be derived, like we're saying, from simply studying the mathematics of a circle. And of course, it can get very, very complicated just because of how we study math, right? But my encouragement is stay with the simplicity of it. Whatever looks the most simple to you, play with the simple stuff, and then relax and open to the insights. So, for example, you know, if you there's a ton of information in this sonic geometry, but there's so much simplicity in it as well. Play with what seems simple to you, and then relax and ask for more insight. Here we go. This is the shape that I'm talking about right here.
Containing only 3 faces and 2 points, compared to a tetrahedron's 4 faces and 4 points. This revolutionary shape, coined a Tryon ray by artist Michael Evans, could very well represent both a quantum jump forward in the study of spatial geometry, while at the same time serving to reconnect us to the moment in our past when humanity made its greatest technological leap in history. As we consider this Tryon ray, with each of its 3 faces locked in arcs of 60 degrees, let's direct our attention to the other significant number in the Sumerian counting system, 12. Watch what happens when we take 12 of these fluid shapes, then radiate them out from 0 point. Of course, there are many directions these 12 vectors could go. How do we know which will keep us on the path of sacred geometry? For that, we simply refer back to the Sumerian 60, this time using it as an angle of deflection to form a structure that, if momentarily frozen in time, would look like this.
Okay, what I want to share about that too is this shape, those 12 little pointy dudes, the Tryon rays going out at equal distance from one another, will actually, if you were to do that in straight line geometry, produces a vector equilibrium. Each of those three-sided shapes corresponds with these straight lines that go right out from the center. So the geometry is not only describing the shape, the structure upon which etheric consciousness can hold physical form, it's also beginning to describe the relationships of how these individual little physical forms can come together as atoms or as forests. It doesn't matter how small it gets or how big it gets. This is the straight line image of the most basic structure that will hold physical form. And this is the curved line description of that, which not a whole lot of people know about yet unless they've watched sonic geometry or played with somebody that has had that insight. Just because physics was built on straight lines, time and space, and linear thinking, right? So how is that helping, if at all, for your questions about geometry? And what is geometry and what is DNA? Where would you like to go with it from here? Because I'm giving you big, broad strokes, but what's interesting to you?
Maybe with DNA, I was taught at school, like I think everybody else, that well, its function is to give the blueprint for the creation of basically proteins. But I think there is much more about DNA, and we talk a lot of transformation of DNA and number of strands of DNA, etc.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'm reading those informations, but I'm yeah. Is there a way to understand it a little in this?
Yeah.
In this view?
Consider, here, let's stop screen sharing. Consider, again, that humanity right now is operating at this level of consciousness, which means the people who are studying may only be accessible to the information at this level of consciousness, even though there's a ton of information beyond that. And if they are using linear science to make their discoveries, they are going to only find what's visible at this level of consciousness. So that might mean 2 strands of DNA. That might mean, well, look at what scientists found. They said 5% of DNA is functional and 95% is junk, right? It's just silly. All that is an ego structure. It's not a bad thing. It's just an ego structure deciding that what it has found is important. And it is important. But, there's 95% more full of information that we just simply don't know how to use yet. So DNA provides the blueprint that tells etheric consciousness, organize yourself like this. Here's the plan. Here's the communication, so that when we do want a new biological being to come into form, there's a pretty ready way for a soul and beyond to bring a physical expression into form so that it holds its shape. If we didn't have DNA, there would be no way for us to recognize the shape of another being. So it's like what's the word? It's like an agreement that says all of us unmanifest said, okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to make physical forms? How are we going to build a system so we'll recognize each other when we get there? Because without that interface, we all just are. There is no distinction. There is no differentiation. So at this level of consciousness, we can notice that DNA creates a differentiation of unique, this is unique from this, and this is unique from this, and this is unique from this. It's like an alphabet in a way. So then when we start noticing multiple strands of DNA or light DNA, what we're doing is looking beyond the prism of this level of consciousness. What we're doing is expanding and saying, ooh, I'm going to look from here. And when I open a window into my knowing, into my own higher levels of clarity and awareness, call it intuition, but it's so far beyond that. You're actually tuning in from a different frequency of consciousness. Then this whole structure of DNA, which down here says is mostly unusable junk, when I let myself look from a higher frequency, then I can see, whoa, there's so much more here to see. There's different structures, there's different insight, there's different awareness. Simply because my consciousness is available up here. So are there multiple strands of DNA? Absolutely. There's like 144. It's not just 12. And those will become evident to us when our mind and egoic structure are available to receive all of that information. And the kindness and the compassion of it is just to acknowledge, okay, this is what my mind, this is, what our structures are, the information we're available to today. But you know what? I want to know more, so start showing me more. And that's when we start getting more insight and clarity that will then look like light DNA, which is simply another dimension of information that provides us with insight for how life in physical form is organized. When you start looking into light DNA and higher frequencies of DNA, that's when you can start to see and differentiate which species lent which part of DNA in order to create a human, a creator incarnate. There are many, many species that contributed to the DNA. Some of the species contributed aspects of DNA that say we are going into light. Other species contributed parts of DNA that said we are going to hold on to what we know and survive. With no judgment, those are just different aspects. When we start saying one is better than the other, that's what kicks us into the part of humanity that holds on so dearly to the conflict. So DNA is, again, when you come into your heart center and start watching from there and saying, you know what, I want to know the truth, and give yourself a blank screen or a blank space that just says, show me information on that screen in a way that works for me. I want to know more about DNA. Information will start to pop and present. Because that's how the system works. When you play that way, you are taking command from your own higher levels, your own higher frequencies. where you can have access to more information. But just consider there's still a part of the mind that only knows this level of information. So let's honor that and say, and talk to these higher levels and say, bring me information that will integrate with this level of understanding and clarity. Because when I work that way and say, you guys up here, give me information that integrates down here, that's where we're saying you're bringing your higher levels into your lower levels, which only uplifts everything. And all of you becomes more accessible to more information. So DNA itself, yes, it is a system of genetics that encodes the physical expression of a body. That's how science understands it so far. But it is also a system by which undifferentiated consciousness organizes itself into form in thought, in physical expression, in how tightly you hold on to that soul level to repeat things. And just the same way that DNA guides our physical expression, we can change the action of the DNA by taking command of our physical expression. And for example, like we were saying before, when we have an old pattern of this is who I am and this is how it's always been and this is how I always do things, and we see it and say, no, I'm not doing it that way anymore, I'm going this way. When you make that decision and you walk through everything that you experience by saying, I'm done with that, I'm not doing it that way anymore, you are changing your DNA. You are changing your physical expression. And you're doing it with command from your higher levels of awareness that say, you know what, I'm going to function from a lighter beingness of me. I'm going to function without that old pattern, that old adherence to this is good and that's bad. Dissolving that soul level is real time changing your DNA. And your DNA goes to higher and higher and higher frequencies. You start to become more aware of more strands. You start to become aware of greater expression. And it's going to go beyond what science can verify at this time, because science is in service to the people functioning at this level. So the more those of us who have a desire to go beyond and already know that there's more, the way we can be in service is by letting ourselves engage with the change in DNA, by knowing that it's possible and watching it happen real time. Now, DNA does not actually exist in space and time. It's an interface. By the time we, take a cell and separate the DNA out and put it on a slide and stain it and then put it in an electron microscope and take pictures of it, well, yeah, at that point, DNA is locked into a physical structure. So yeah, it exists in physical space and time at that point. But while DNA is live and doing its job, it is an interface between undifferentiated, timeless, spaceless creation and what we can recognize as physical structure. Another example. Scientists and astronomers now are seeing things in space that weren't there before. How does that happen? Were they actually not there? Or has humanity's awareness and level of consciousness arisen and opened and expanded to where we can now perceive what's there? So I just saw an article this morning. Scientists have located a second Earth, another planet that has all the signatures that would support life the same way this planet supports life, right? How many years have we been looking for that? Long time. Just like this doctor who truly created holographic blood imaging, because for 40 years he knew there was something there. For how many years have we been searching for life in space? 15 years ago there was no water on Mars. Now Mars is full of water. All of that is examples. That is the proof and the evidence of the changes in DNA, of what creation actually looks like. And geometry describes the structure upon which the physical world has been created and how to organize ourselves to generate harmony in what we create. So if I'm a mathematician, I can do the math and I can look at the angles and I can produce equations that describe how things fit together to generate harmony. If I'm not a mathematician, but I'm an empathic person, I can be aware of the presence of a natural harmony in any situation. And when I place my awareness and let my body and call forward the movement of that harmony through my body, I am a walking creator of harmony, even among the densest places. It's just density sometimes takes a little bit to shake it loose so it can come into harmony. And that's what we're seeing on the planet right now with all the weather things and all of the yucky stuff that people are doing that they've been doing for thousands of years. It's just now we can see it. Because now there's enough light on the planet to harmonize it rather than go right back down into it. So there are parallels and metaphors for all of this when you start letting yourself play with the simplicity of an egoic structure, time and space, or the movement of consciousness looking to harmonize itself. So does that help your awareness of DNA and how it fits in your world? Oh, you're muted. I can't hear you.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Yes. Of course, I would have maybe other questions, but on the general concept, yeah, it's very helpful. Mm-hmm.
So what are the other questions?
When I think about it, it's questions that are not absolutely necessary. Like, I would like to know how exactly does it function, what exactly is like DNA and
mean like the proteins?
Do we retain? Does DNA? Is there a link between consciousness and DNA, or But yeah, maybe then it becomes very, very complicated, and I couldn't understand anyway. So
Yeah. Well, yeah. The answer is yes. There's absolutely a link between consciousness and DNA. when I, like, even just you asking that, when I look at it, it's like a relationship where DNA is in service to consciousness. And the proteins, the reason why the proteins are what they are is because the way those atoms structure themselves to create a protein, that's like a code in consciousness, right? That says, build yourself this way. And those proteins they have a consciousness of their own, that their service is translation. Translating from non-physical to physical. And it is the actual literal geometry of the proteins that vibrate together in a certain way. And it's that vibration, it's the movement of the vibration that consciousness responds to slow it down, right? Because consciousness is a vibration, it's energy at frequencies that we don't know how to measure. And so when you have this structure we call a protein, and it's vibrating in this certain way in relationship to this other protein vibrating in this certain way, those vibrations serve to slow down the frequency of consciousness so that it can create a physical form. Right? We call it protein. That's what science created. Great, we have a word. It's great. But that's what's happening, is these proteins, there's 4 different proteins on top of the nucleic acid structure. It's because those atoms coming together, vibrating in that certain way, slow down the frequencies of consciousness enough so that it becomes a recognizable physical form. So it is an intimate relationship between DNA and consciousness. To the degree that DNA is consciousness, it's just a physical representation of consciousness that helps us have bodies. And it's no different for, the particles that don't have DNA, like minerals. Minerals don't have DNA per se, but they have geometric structures that vibrate in a certain way that slows consciousness down enough so that it becomes denser and 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 slower. And then we can recognize it to be a rock. Mm-hmm. And then you're right. Yeah, you can complicate it as much as you want. That's what science does. Again, not a bad thing or a good thing, but science will then take another particle and zoom even further into it to see how it works. How does it fit? Right? And then when you zoom back out, you get the macrocosm again. It's all metaphoric and it's all infinite. It's infinitely small and it's infinitely large. And that's the beauty of our ability in consciousness. You can tune in and you can zoom in. Like during meditation is a great time to play with it. Play with an image of DNA while you meditate and say, okay, zoom me in. Zoom me into that protein. Now show me the vibration. It's a self-guided tour. But yeah, it gets as complicated as you want it to get. And it's as simple as a sphere. But that's where, those vibrations of those structures, and more so the space in between the structures. Like if you have a physical structure vibrating, I'll just be very crude about it. You have two physical structures vibrating. There's space in between them, right? And that space in between them is going to respond to those vibrations. When we tune in to DNA, or we tune into a sense, or we tune into thoughts, thoughts have structure. DNA has structure. It's all vibrating. But when we tune in, what we're actually feeling is the movement of the space through and around all of those structures. That's consciousness. That's our awareness. And our systems, the chemistry of the brain, the interface with the mind and the ego, all of those, that system of awareness for us, we're actually tuning in to the way the space moves in between the structures, the movement of consciousness as in response to the vibration of structures. Vibration is always going to create movement. It'll either be a harmonious movement, or it'll be stuff moving in all sorts of different directions because the vibrations are not in harmony. Mm-hmm. Geometry describes a way for all the vibrations to create movement in harmony. When things are created outside of geometric parameters, what we will experience is less of a sense of harmony and more complicatedness and chaoticness. That's why a forest feels easy and simple, because it has the expression, its structures are vibrating in a way that they respond to one another in harmony. And then when we go to a city and there are buildings that are not built to vibrate so much, or they vibrate very slowly and at different kinds of slow, and people have their thoughts that are all vibrating like this, there isn't a harmonious movement of space. And so our senses tell us there's an absence of harmony, or a lower state of harmony. And harmony is, again, just a term for things that feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Past lives. And if you have other questions, then say so, because it's totally okay to have those questions and more complicated questions. Keep them coming, because that's how your mind is building its own path back to the heart. So honor all of those questions, even if they seem tedious and little. Honor them, but know that once you have the question, you can put that question on the table and zoom in and call in, you know what, show me the space that takes me to the clarity. Because that's all I'm doing. When you ask the question, I take that question, and the question is a structure. Like, just to make a metaphor out of it, the question is a geometric structure that vibrates in a certain way. I tune into the space and what's moving in there. Where does it take me? What information comes? What information comes? And that's why your question matters, for the detail. And if you want more detail, it's no different than just zooming in. Right?
Mm-hmm. There is a question presenting now. It's a little bit different, but since we are all unique, I mean, there can be only, or I'm trying to think about, well, if the feelings and the knowings we have are a little bit different for everybody, I mean, is there an absolute external reality for everybody or not? Because yeah, I would I would tend to answer no.
And how do you,
But
why
sorry?
why would you answer no?
Because more and more I really, it seems to me that really we, as you were explaining, we create things as we are exploring, experiencing, and even if I don't know, I'm thinking about the concept of oneness now, and I don't know if oneness is about, well, I don't know how it feels like, first of all, but is it simply a space where you feel all the other perspectives at the same time, or is it just that you have one unique perspective? But I would rather say the first one. Well,
What if it is the absence of conflict with any perspective? So every perspective gets to exist, even yours, and you have no conflict with any of them. What's that feel like?
Yeah, that it feels good. It feels, to say good, harmonious, or it also feels very much it's not the word I'm looking for, but I would say detached. But it's not yeah. And there is something that a force or an energy that is moving the whole, and yep. I don't have to control it. I don't have to I can just be here who I am and just enjoy the thing.
So hang on, I'm going to close this window. So what if oneness is the absence of conflict with creation, and at the same time acknowledging creation will keep happening? Your uniqueness, by what you see in the world, the beauty you see, how it fits into what else you see, it's not going to match anybody else. The way you see a flower is going to be different than the way anybody else on the planet sees a flower. I mean, maybe the flower's shape is like this, but the way you see the colors, the way you see the softness of it, the way you experience the aroma, nobody is going to have that same combination of senses as you. That's your uniqueness. And when I walk with no conflict, I have no conflict with anybody else's experience, no conflict with the existence of different perspectives or creations, and just acknowledge, okay, they exist. That absence of conflict describes what we call oneness. So a lot of the teaching has been pointing in a way of like seeking oneness. I got to find oneness. I have to make my way back to oneness. When And then the teaching will also say it exists everywhere all the time, but then they keep saying you got to find it. When you stop having conflict with creation in its limitless forms, that absence of conflict, it is an absence of something that describes oneness. It is more, I guess, accurate so far, is what I've seen, to use the absence of something to describe states of being rather than a word that defines it, right? We can say nirvana, we can say bliss, excuse me, we can say peace, but right there we just sort of created another box with an outside edge that would say, well, that isn't it, and that is it, and da 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 da. But instead, without creating the definition, I can talk about the absence of judgment, the absence of conflict. And that's just going to open a space for your awareness to move through so that you can know the sense of oneness rather than the definition of oneness. Or peace or whatever. But play with that sense that we were just with. The absence of conflict describes oneness with everything.
Well, yeah. Right now, I'm not in an absence of conflict, for example. I have a headache and I'm trying to,
Yeah, and see, that's the thing. That's like, let's just celebrate that for a second. And I know, pain isn't really fun. Headaches, although sometimes they are, when you play with it as information. It's just your body that was built from a frequency here, trying to catch up to you that's operating at a frequency here, not really knowing how to let go of things because it's what the DNA was built this way, right? But when we just say, okay, there's a headache, it's uncomfortable, but I'm going to tune right into the place that is in conflict in my head and bring space there. Like all the playtime that we do in our sessions that's what it's all about. Is saying, there's a conflict. This is disharmony. So let's bring space there. And actually work with consciousness as it is. That's always going to bring expansion right into that space. And the one requirement is to stop judging that pain is bad. And it's not always easy because of the programming, but it is that simple. So when we're playing with the space in between the structures that are in conflict with one another, where can I bring movement? Where can I bring the movement of light and consciousness and the absence of conflict right in between, right into the conflict? And watch how the body responds. That is what changes your DNA. So when we do healing sessions, when we go to see a healer or an energy worker, that's all they're doing, is they're bringing higher frequencies of light and consciousness and moving it through the spaces in between the structures, which will only raise the vibration of the structures. And at higher vibrations, harmony finds itself because there's just less density. That's the simplicity of what healing is. And it looks like all sorts of different complicated things because we're aware of a lot of complicated things. And that's how the physical world has been created. But that's why having the commitment to play with that level of simplicity speeds things up exponentially. You don't, like you were saying, you don't have to go through years of regression therapy when the priority is bring a higher frequency of space, of movement into that space, and everything will restructure itself, including your DNA. And the way it looks on a day-to-day basis is simply recognizing, oh, that's an old structure. I could get caught up in that. I could say, this is me. I've always been this way. I'm angry. I'm sad. I'm this, I'm that, I'm this. We can do that, and we probably still will. But the simplicity of sailing right through it is to look and say, no, I'm not going to give my body over to that structure anymore. I'm going in a different direction. Show me, help me, let's go, let's go, let's go. And that is engaging with the higher levels, real time, day to day. So I want to just, I want to touch on the past lives thing. And it maybe it's been covered already, but the past, exploring past lives and what we've been through before, when we're playing with that kind of information, we're tapping into the soul level. And that's that part of us that does carry the information forward from life stream to life stream. And so, again, you got free reign to play with it as much as you like. And there are past lives that feel awesome. And it's so compelling. You know, I meet people that I know I've had dances with, and it's so compelling to go right back into it. You know, whether it's a wide open love or a battlefield or whatever it might be, but you can bet it was highly charged and it was highly identified with. I am the queen, you know. For me, it was the biggest one. The one that's been most compelling for me was Atlantis, and being part of an engineering team that took things a little too far, you know, and changed the planet in a way that didn't really benefit us. And so the planet shifted and everything disappeared. And there's been so much for me carried in that level, in the soul levels for me, that it's a lot. It's been a lot, and it's been very prevalent in my personal awareness. But that's all happening at a soul level that said, we've been through this before, let's not do it again. You know? And again, another time they could draw so many correlations to what's happening on the planet right now, and how humanity really is making the choice to not repeat that stuff. Because those of us who can recognize on a soul level what's actually going on now have the capacity to dissolve all of that. So, Mirka, do you have specific questions about the past lives, or is this helping your understanding and the clarity that you were wanting?
Yes, it does. It helps a lot. It was sort of the question how to dissolve past life experience, and do I have to go back, and do I have to go back into it? And it often, when I observe people doing it a lot, past life regression work, I always have the feeling they reproduce past life experience day, and I wondered if there is a different way. And you addressed you addressed it this way already, but I would love if you the thing, how to solve it, is it just break energy, putting off the charge, or what are the tools to use at that point?
Okay. So it's very much about recognizing the charge. And when you are willing to work with the charge, all of the images and the memories, that'll all present as well. But what's really important is you know, the whole reason in past life regression, the whole reason they walk through it again is to get really clear on the charge of it and then recognize where I am today. And all of this is different than where I am today. So that it becomes really clear this is a past life. We can relive it, but we don't have to, right? So the way past life regression is done, it's like, just like what we see with computers, you know, computers today can do way more in a speck of the time and space from computers even 20 years ago, because the technology has improved. It's no different with our bodies. Because our DNA has been changing, our physical human technology has improved. That's why we can do things differently. So, are you talking about helping someone else through past life stuff or for yourself? As I'll talk about it differently.
It's also in general, but also for myself.
Okay. So, the tools come down to recognizing when you feel that charge. Okay, again, we'll be very simple. When you recognize that charge, that's the time to say, okay, what's going on? And the tool can be as simple as let the charge exist, turn and look, see what's going on, the memories, the images, but stay with your body, because your body is current time and space. That's why we do that. Because knowing what's current helps us recognize the constructs on the soul level and the karmic level. Yes, you can break energy with it, but recognize that this is a highly charged scenario that is only presenting because it's ready to leave. And so my part, here's the simplicity of it. You don't have to relive it. See it for what it is and don't hold on. Be right in current time. That's what, when we're playing in the sessions, that's exactly what we're doing. That's what I walk you through each time. So for yourself, it's claiming that level of mastery to stay with the body. Here's what's going on, past life, there's all the details. Yep, there's all the details. Stay with the body. Recognize this is all particles of consciousness. They all were created at one time. The dissolving happens when I do not identify with it. And I stay with the body real time. So for myself, the Atlantic, oh, go ahead if you have a question.
Yeah, I just wanted, does it, this also, can I also apply it for soul contracts?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Because, and again, simplicity, the soul contract is particles of consciousness that were created, and they have a charge to them because at one point, one or more people looked at it and said, that's important. And if that doesn't happen, here's all the consequences. So all it is particles of consciousness that the thought of a soul contract created a structure that slowed consciousness down, so it moved very slowly through those spaces. Okay? That ties in all the geometry, all the DNA, all the movement, and all everything. That's all it is. That's all a soul contract is consciousness slowed down in a way that human as creator put a charge on it that said that's important. So it exists. However, when we recognize from here that it does not serve anymore, the way to dissolve it is recognize who I am today as creator, that aspect of me that is limitless, that is infinite, of the highest vibrations and rising, taking my awareness to it, recognizing the charge of it, and recognizing it's only presenting because it's ready to leave. So from that knowing, I'm going to watch it break apart and leave. And I know it's real because I feel the movement different, right? When the structure is held tightly by its own importance, it's going to stay moving in this certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And when I bring a higher awareness to it with a higher frequency, it's going to start creating movement differently, and I can feel that movement. And it will start to change that structure, because that dense structure cannot maintain itself at a higher frequency. So that is the simplicity of dissolving past life structures, past life memories, past life dimensions, contracts, agreements, vows.
Mm-hmm.
And it all comes down to the willingness to feel my own awareness bringing a different level of movement right into the structure.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Welcome. And the only way it stays stuck is if we continue to give it importance. Right?
Yes. I think that's what I mean by what I meant by when I watch people being so fixated on past lives, they give it so much importance.
Exactly.
And yeah, so.
And that only maintains its existence.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's okay to see it all that simply and address it that simply.
Yeah, it's perfect. I love it. I love the simplicity of it, and it feels so right in a way, or so it's so easy to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like for myself, you know, when I have past life stream things come to the forefront, it can feel, whoa, you know, and the emotion of it, like the whole thing from the Atlantis thing was so charged. There was so much guilt. And it wasn't just mine. It was like all of humanity going, oh my God, what did we do? You know? And it took several times, lots of times playing with it, because the charge of it would bowl me over to where I would feel like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. That's why all I could do was come back to this simplicity, because if I let it be any more complicated than that, I was right back in the charge of it. So I had to come to this simplicity of, okay, if I am this infinite being and I have these layers and levels of consciousness that are so far beyond this, I have to operate from there. Otherwise, I don't know what I'm doing. So I kind of made it up that this is how you do it. It's that simple. It has to be that simple. Otherwise, I'm stuck in it. And I'm not willing to be stuck in it. So let's go. If I'm creator, let's go. You know, and it really was a total commitment to living what I know to the degree that it becomes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the commitment that we get to make to ourselves. Yeah. Because that is what serves humanity and all of life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other fun stuff? you want to ask or play with today? That covers our list.
It's so much, and it's so great. I really love it that how you my mind is not that organized to find the words to describe it, and it really made a click the moment you said that our higher levels are higher than the soul level, that I can relate to a level that creator level is higher than the soul level, and um, that only sentence made brought so much clarity for me, and how I can work with it.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
Cool. Yeah, because that's where it gets really fun. It's like you need a tool, create it. Higher levels, give me the tool, show me, or point me in the direction to what's going to spark it, so then I know what I'm doing. That's the dance. That's engaging. That's actually playing with oneness, where everything is undifferentiated until we need it. And so it's very, very fluid. And it's fun, intense. It still feels intense, but it's fun. So yay.
Okay.
Okay. Hang on. I'm going to turn off the recording.